speaker this evening gives me great pleasure to say one of our students. Emily is in Year 10. She's an aspiring human rights lawyer and activist for many causes. She'd like to study in New York, so would I, and play an ongoing role in the battle for equality and protection of human rights for all. So it's with great pleasure that I invite Emily Carr up to the front. Emily.
We all think that human trafficking or modern slavery is something that happens somewhere else, something that happens to someone else, and certainly not something that happens in the place that we live. Human trafficking is the illegal movement of people, known for either forced labour or sexual exploitation. Human trafficking resonates with me simply because I am a human being who doesn't like the suffering of others. We must note that human trafficking is not the movement of people across borders to facilitate escape from a corrupt regime, such as that of Syrians to Turkey and onwards. Human trafficking is the movement of people for exploitation. The definition of modern slavery is a reference to the institution of slavery that is still in existence today, and unfortunately will be embedded in our society for many years to come, only if we don't do something. 35.8 million people around the world are enslaved. 4.5 million are sexually exploited, and last year in the UK, 3,266 people were identified as potential victims of human trafficking. My point that I put to you all tonight is that human trafficking is an issue for us all, even in West Sussex. I'm sure you've all heard of Gatwick Airport, but what most of you may not know is that in June 2015, 40 Sussex police officers raided homes in Surrey and South East London in connection to reports of human trafficking and forced prostitution. Gatwick Airport is seen as a smuggling point for traffickers. 40.3 million passengers passed through the airport in 2015, flying to over 200 destinations, so it's hard to catch traffickers and rescue victims. In 2014, a gang trafficked more than 60 women in their teens and 20s. These women were forced to work in hotels in Sussex, Kent, and probably just as certainly in Sussex University as prostitutes. Fortunately, the gang who trafficked these women were brought to justice. However, now these women are victims of post-traumatic stress disorder as they try to pick up the pieces of their lives. I'm talking about this issue because I'm tired of people being seized, taken to a new land and forced to do something horrendous, and that our government and many others do not do nearly enough to stop the exploitation and unjust treatment of people. I am frustrated that there are so many misconceptions around the victims of human trafficking and the traffickers themselves. These misconceptions range from that all victims are a certain race, gender, or sexuality. This is all false. And if there's one thing I can stress enough tonight, is that human trafficking can happen to anyone, at any time. And if we as a society continue to have this ignorance, we will never see change. Not our children, and nor our children's children. I do not want to grow up in a world where human trafficking exists, or in a society where this is seen as something that happens somewhere else, to someone else, and because of that, we don't need to talk about it. Not talking about difficult or unpleasant things makes ignorance, and hard for people to speak up about what might be happening to them. Ignorance or denial can mean you never question your friend who has a housekeeper who never seems to leave their house. We must talk and acknowledge controversial issues to make change happen. William Wilberforce was the leader of the movement to abolished slavery. England itself abolished slavery in 1807, but it still exists. As William Wilberforce once said, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again